What the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.
What the hell is going on, everybody? Happy Sunday, also known as Saturday night, depending on where you are on this giant floating rock that is hurtling through an infinite space. Welcome. Church is in session. It is Sunday. Gather around. Come in. Make yourself comfortable. Grab a beanbag. Come a little bit closer to the front. That's it. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Getting close. Daddy's getting weird. Okay? That's what we're doing today. All right? We've got an interesting show today. Is that better? Is that better? Sorry, I must have had a loose cable. My apologies. Damn, we really got the we nearly got the show off. That's two in a row we've had bad starts, actually. No, it's not. It's not. You don't need to refresh. It is literally my microphone cable was not plugged in properly. It's as simple as that. It's not a conspiracy. It's just poor craftsmanship from me. Okay. Where was I? The show today. Okay, what we're doing is Cathy O'Brien. It's still not plugged in. Check. Let me try again. Hold on. Let me check myself. Check. It sounds good to me. No, it doesn't. Okay, we're gonna reboot. One sec. Do you have me back? Give me a yes, sir, in the chat. My word. Okay. Let's go from the top. What the hell is going on, everybody? Welcome. Thank you for being here. Happy Sunday. I'm glad we got that fixed. It is, well, it's also known as Saturday night, depending on where you are on this giant floating rock that is hurtling through space. But it is Sunday, church is in session, and we've got an interesting show today. So please gather around, get comfortable, excuse the little hiccups at the start. We're looking at a whistleblower testimony today, Cathy O'Brien. And the reason, so this show has actually been set up and ready to go for probably about a month, okay? And it just didn't happen, which is really weird for me. Like, I had this has been, we could have done this at any point, right? But we just didn't. Why? I don't know. Was it the Adjustment Bureau? Did they come in and make some little timeline adjustments and stop me from doing this show because we had to wait until Chris Bledsoe did a big show on American Alchemy, and then everyone was asking the question, is NASA mind controlling him? And then it would be much more suitable to watch the whistleblower testimony of someone in the 90s saying, yes, indeed, NASA do mind control people. They mind controlled me, and they have an entire facility dedicated to it. So was that the Adjustment Bureau? I don't know. Maybe. It could have been. But we're going to find out. So that's what we're looking at today, Cathy O'Brien. And look, I will just say as well, before we go any further, this testimony is like pretty graphic. So just, disclaimer alert, some of the things that get talked about are pretty heavy. So, we'll always try and keep the show as light as we can, of course, but just letting you guys know, it does get pretty heavy. I will just say as well, before we talk about Cathy, that a few people were saying to watch the vetted video on Chris Bledsoe, which I did, and actually it was a really good video actually. Pretty interesting, and we might even watch a few clips from that maybe early next week, because I think Patrick he's got a lot of good points in there, and I think it's interesting. It's always good to hear the other side, right? Because you guys know I don't really have an agenda other than whatever the truth is. I have zero emotional attachment to literally anything other than just finding out what the actual truth is. So I'm happy to hear the other side, and I actually do think he has some good points on there. So that will be interesting. Before we start off with this testimony, which is going to go for just under an hour, we have I'm going to just read to you the Wikipedia entry for Cathy O'Brien. Okay, this is what Wikipedia has to say. Here we go. Reaction. And look, already this is hilarious to me. Cathy O'Brien, conspiracy theorist. Okay, just need to let you guys know that everything you're about to read is a conspiracy theory. Okay, it's part of her title. Actually, it's on her birth certificate. Cathy O'Brien conspiracy theorist. Okay, this is her born name. And this is what it says about her. Cathy O'Brien, born December 4th, 1957, is an American conspiracy theorist. Okay? So it's not like, oh, she has, she has a career in biology, or she's like she's a trained nurse. No, she's an American conspiracy theorist. That's it. That's what she is. That is what defines her. And she's an author who claims to have been a victim of government mind control program called Project Monarch, which she alleges was part of the CIA's Project MKUltra. O'Brien made these assertions in Transformation of America and Access Denied for Reasons of National Security, both of which she co-authored and self-published with her husband, Mark Phillips. According to scholars, there is no credible evidence for O'Brien's claims, and there are numerous inconsistencies in her story. Isn't that crazy that there's no credible evidence from the government that the government were mind controlling people? That's crazy. And I'll just read a little bit of this before we get started. In Transformation of America, O'Brien claims that as a child, she was sexually abused, first by her father and then by a network of C peers. Supposedly, she was then forced by the CIA to participate in Project Monarch, which she claims is a subsection of Project MKUltra and Project Artichoke. According to O'Brien, under hypnosis, she was able to recall memories of sexual abuse of both herself and her daughter by international PDF rings, drug barons, and Satanists who allegedly used a form of trauma-based mind control programming to make her a sex slave. And she goes on to say that a lot of this was done at these NASA facilities. And just one more paragraph and then we'll get into it. O'Brien accuses a wide range of prominent people from American, Canadian, Mexican, and Saudi Arabian government officials to stars of the country music scene of being part of Project Monarch conspiracy to operate sex slave rings and commit child abuse. For example, O'Brien claims that George Bush and Miguel de la Madrid used holograms, here we go, to appear to her in altered forms, saying Bush apparently activated a hologram of the lizard-like alien, which provided the illusion of Bush transforming like a chameleon before my eyes. In retrospect, I understand that Bush had been painstakingly careful in positioning our seats in order that the hologram's effectiveness be maximized. Okay? So that is where this is all kind of heading, right? And I just want to say, first of all, look, reptilians and stuff, who knows, man? Who knows? It's extreme. What's fascinating to me is like, okay, look, yes, it's an extremely hard thing to picture and imagine that there are these people turning into lizards, or some people are perceiving that at the very least. That's crazy. I agree. What I don't get is, why are all these people independently having the same hallucination? Is everyone independently going crazy and having an identical hallucination? Or like, what if people aren't turning into lizards? Why the fuck is there all these people saying that they're seeing that happening? Like, is this a separate phenomena of a sickness or a hallucination that people are catching that we're unaware of? Is this a disease that we don't know about? What is it? Why? Like, that's what I want to know, at least. Like, okay, reptilians are fake and that's just a tinfoil conspiracy. Okay, fine. Why is everyone saying that they can see people turning into lizards then? What is this? Is it a product of MKUltra? Look, it's got to be something. I just, what is it? That's what I want to try and find out today. So that is hopefully we're going to get a little bit closer to that with Cathy's testimony. Before we do though, Angela, thank you very much, you little freak, for becoming a member. I appreciate you. Snail Burner put in $11 before we even started. Thank you, Snail. Corrupt NPC with 3 months says, in my opinion, the phenomena, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, etc., is caused by the final AI humanity creates, and we are in a cosmic chicken or the egg situation. I like it, bro. I like your theory with that one. And he's also gifted a membership. Thank you very much. Appreciate you, man. Rambro gifted a membership as well. Thank you very much, Rambro, you legend. Richo, celebrating 5 months, says, can we have the intro again? Sorry, I know. I'm sorry, guys. It's 2 shows in a row where I absolutely cooked it at the start. Third time lucky, hopefully. And Benjamin Dickens says, never actually say anything. NASA, hope Bali is serving you well. Enjoy a nice smoothie or bintang, brother, and keep up the brilliant work, mate. Cheers, Ben. Thank you very much, Ben. I appreciate you, bro. There will be many a smoothies coming my way after this. All right, here we go. Like I said, viewer discretion is advised. This goes for just under an hour. We will stop off along the way as we need to.
I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out here tonight to arm yourselves with knowledge about a tool that's being covertly used to usher in what Adolf Hitler and George Bush termed New World Order, and that's mind control. I've enjoyed talking with quite a few of you earlier this evening pertaining to how mind control has affected some of you or some of your loved ones. Mind control is very prevalent in this country and around the world. These criminals that are in control of our country operate on the philosophy that secret knowledge equals power. Many government secrets and personal reputations were staked on the belief that I could not be deprogrammed to remember those things that I was supposed to forget. They were wrong. For as intelligent as these perpetrators are, they're limited in their thinking by their own immorality. They don't have wisdom. They don't think deep. And they never considered the strength of the human spirit. They never considered what would happen when a good man like Mark Phillips gained knowledge of their secrets and used them to restore a mind rather than control one. I know that I'm extremely fortunate to have survived my CIA, MKUltra, White House, Pentagon level, trauma base, mind control victimization. Now that I'm in control of my own mind and ultimately my free will, I'm telling everything that I witnessed and saw and heard and photographically recorded behind the scenes of this New World Order effort. By telling their secrets, their power is eroding. I also speak out to give voice to the many mind control victims and survivors out there who can't think to speak out and tell what they know and what they've endured. I speak out for the sake of my daughter, Kelly, who's now 16 years old and is a political prisoner in the custody of the state of Tennessee, where she's being denied any rehabilitation due to the political affluence of her abusers. She's counting on Mark and I to get this word out on her behalf. For Kelly's sake and for your sake, Mark and I have gone to great lengths to document the facts and the truths that are listed in our book, Transformation of America. Transformation of America is self-published, uncensored, so that you can have the facts that you have a right to know and a need to know.
What? Okay. The Skinny. Wow. The Skinny has just gifted 50 memberships. 50. Skinny, I hope you didn't actually accidentally put a 0 on the end of that. But if you didn't, thank you very much. That is insane generosity. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And that is 50 new freaks that we've just collected in this beautiful little corner of the internet. Thank you so much. And guys, let's get some love in the chat for the Skinny. What a legend. And all the new weirdos. Guys, that gives you access to members-only live streams, which are going to happen tomorrow night. Members-only videos, and the members-only section of our Discord, which is the coolest place to hang out on the internet, which is active 24/7. So come and hang out. Come and hang out. Thank you very much, The Skinny. You're a legend.
These truths have been covered up and kept from all of us for a long time under a blanket of so-called national security. This is the same blanket of national security that has prevented us from obtaining justice despite the extensive evidences and documentation we have. We have over 27,000 documents and evidences. Government insider.
I'm sorry to cut her off, but Kat Simpson, that's a nice little badge you got there. Congratulations on the 12 months. Very nice. Exclusive member with the orange, beautiful orange 12-month badge. You are now a Polarity General. You are a general of the channel. Thank you very much.
Testimony, medical records, more than enough evidence for any legal procedure in this country, including congressional. But this blanket of national security has stopped us from obtaining justice. It's time for truth to prevail. It's time that these truths were brought to light for the sake of humanity as we know it. I'd like to begin by defining mind control by my experience. I realized that my experience was extreme, that the extensive, total robotic, absolute mind control I endured is more limited than the kind of mind control that's proliferating in society. Mind control has kind of a sliding scale where you've got the total robotic mind control on one side, and you've got mind control that's proliferating, such as in occultism in this country, or Global Education 2000, where children are losing their freedom of thought and their ability to critically analyze. There's so many.
I would say, like she's saying, mind control is on a spectrum, essentially. I would argue, I mean, I feel like I don't even need to argue this. I feel like most of you guys would probably just agree with me. But I think our phones and like scrolling through a feed is mind control, because most of it is like curated, censored, and there is an algorithm behind it. So like we are kind of, our thoughts are almost like subservient to whoever is in charge of the algorithm, right? Like whatever the algorithm is, whatever the algorithm's instructions are, whether it's to just keep feeding you more of what you like, and then you live in this like echo chamber of just reinforcing all of your opinions, whether they're right or wrong, or maybe the algorithm, you know, like, or maybe whoever is in charge of the app, that whatever app's algorithm you're on, could be, you know, have an agenda. Like it wants you to believe a certain thing, or it wants you to feel a certain way about world events that are happening. So it's twisting the kind of stories and the news that you're getting to make you feel a certain way, i.e. mind control, but on a very subtle, subconscious level, right? And then you've obviously got straight up like mind control, MKUltra level.
Different aspects of society that are affected by mind control in varying degrees. It's imperative that this information get out. And as I explained, my victimization, it certainly can be applied to all different facets of mind control and mind manipulation. And as Mark and I have heard so many, many times from people who have read the book and heard us speak out, that this is a thread that's tying things together. All of a sudden, this whole new world order is making sense. The erosion of constitutional values, the erosion of morality in this country, all of a sudden, it begins to make sense when we learn about mind control.
Yep.
I was born in 1957 in Muskegon, Michigan, to a multi-generational incest-based family. This means my father was sexually abused as a child, my mother was sexually abused as a child, and they were sexually abusing me. My father sexually abused me as far back as I can remember. And I've often heard him state that he began substituting his penis for my mother's nipple while I was still an infant. I tell you this so that you can understand that my sexuality was confused in infancy. It was put into an area of my brain that's much like survival, like eating and drinking would be. I tell you these facts so that you can be better armed and understand what's happening in society. And name names. Mark and I name names in our book, Transformation of America, not so that I can say, well, I was in the White House with so-and-so. I mean, I missed the whole glamour part, but this is so you know who the problem is and where these problems lie. The sexual abuse that I was enduring was so horrific that I developed dissociative identity disorder. This used to be termed multiple personality disorder, and I'm so glad they've changed it to dissociative identity disorder because it really more aptly describes the compartmentalization that occurs when a person endures trauma that is literally too horrible to comprehend. Even though I couldn't understand that what my father was doing was morally wrong, the pain and the suffocation of his abuse was so extensive that I developed dissociative identity disorder. It certainly was incomprehensible. There was no place for it in my mind to deal with such horror. Therefore, I developed a compartment in my brain, a little area behind amnesic barriers that was actually the neuron pathway shutting down in my brain in order to compartmentalize the memory of the abuse so that the rest of my mind could function normally as though nothing had happened. So if I'd see my father at the dinner table, I didn't remember sexual abuse. But as soon as he unzipped his pants, the part of me, that part in my brain that knew how to deal with that horrific abuse, the neuron pathways actually physically opened up so that that part of my mind could deal with my father again and again and again as needed. I certainly had a lot of experiences within that compartment that dealt with my father's abuse. But I didn't have a full range of perceptions. I had a very limited perception, a very limited view. Therefore, I'm so glad it's not termed personality anymore. I developed another compartment in my brain to deal with my mother's abuse. Her abuse was primarily psychological. She suffered from dissociative identity disorder herself, and I don't hold her accountable for her actions the way that I do my father, who is fully aware of what he was doing. My mother, in spite of her inability to control herself, destroyed any remnants of self-esteem that I might have developed. And her abuse was so horrific that I developed another compartment in my brain just to deal with my mother. I developed another compartment to deal with the child pornography that my father was subjecting me to. He was earning his living as a worm digger on a 6th grade education and supplemented the family income with child pornography that was being distributed through the local Michigan mafia pornography ring. At that time, there's a criminal faction of our government that was interested in targeting children such as myself for mind control, because this compartmentalization of memory was something that they deemed ideal for keeping government secrets. After all, if I couldn't think to remember, how could I tell about it? Additionally, people who suffer from dissociative identity disorder develop a photographic memory behind those amnesic barriers, because the brain has a defense mechanism that when trauma occurs, it photographically records events surrounding trauma. And an example of this would be that many of you who are old enough to remember, when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, most people know exactly where they were and what they were doing, because this was an event that traumatized the nation. And this exemplifies how the mind photographically records events surrounding trauma.
That's so true. I mean, I wasn't alive when that happened, obviously, but I absolutely photographically remember the 9/11, and I'm probably pretty sure everyone in this chat can recall exactly where they were who they spoke to at the time, and almost kind of like the day, like how that day kind of played out, and like the vibe. And yeah, it's weird, isn't it, how those things just kind of burn into your memory.
So behind these amnesic barriers, I had a photographic memory, which the government deemed ideal for programming. That way I could deliver messages to and from government leaders, or in my case also drug lords, who were involved in funding the black budget and funding the New World Order controls. They're interested in programming me so that I would deliver the messages verbatim. When I delivered messages, I delivered exactly what I was told, using the voice inflections of my abusers, with no conscious comprehension of what I was even saying. It was just a tape recorder just parroting out exactly what I'd been told. Another aspect that the government was interested in is that as a dissociative identity disordered person, I had no concept of time, because I was going from compartment to compartment of my brain with no memory of what had happened before. Therefore, I had no ability to even keep track of time, and a concept of it was just absolutely impossible. And it also makes for, if I didn't know what I was doing earlier, I wouldn't know to be tired while I was overdoing something else. Therefore, a person who suffered from dissociative identity disorder had extensive physical endurance, just superhuman strength and ability to keep going and going and going and going. Dissociative identity disorder persons also develop 44 times visual acuity. Very often that's why you see them wide-eyed with the whites around their eyes, because they're actually taking in more of their surroundings than the average person.
I mean, do I need to say it? Do I need to say it? This is 1990. This is like 1995, people. This is 1995. She's saying this. Do I need to say it? No, I don't, because the whole chat is already saying it for me. Yep. Yep. There's a good handful of people surrounding very spooky topics, not just UFOs, Epstein files, who look just like that. And they haven't always looked like that, but they seem to appear sometimes looking like that. And it's a bit weird, because they seem to be saying things that don't necessarily like fit into like what the general understanding of reality is, or like or how something functions. They're kind of saying the opposite. And it just feels very out of character. So that's very interesting to hear.
44 times more detail than the average person sees. That certainly makes them perfect marksmen for mercenary operations, or for intelligence in different areas that the government was interested in developing mind control.
And just to touch on that quickly, I interviewed Gray. It goes by the name Gray Monarch on X, and we did a 2-part interview on the channel, and he's basically a whistleblower for these programs as a victim, and also sort of working in them for a little while. And he explicitly says that most of the people involved in Skywatcher, no one specifically, just most of them, have all gone through MKUltra style programs, whether it's like Monarch or whatever you want to call it, that they've all been through that. And I mean, Jordan Jozak basically said that in that video that he did last year on X.
I was a chosen one, or a prime candidate for mind control, because of the sexual abuse that I had endured. My sexuality had been enhanced. Therefore, I was used as a sex slave, and also delivered messages to and from these government leaders. At that time, because the government, this criminal faction of our government, was so interested in dissociative identity disordered persons, they knew that any child that was subjected to child pornography had to have endured trauma so horrible that they had to be suffering from that disorder. Therefore, this criminal faction of our government sanctioned this child pornography ring so that they could identify and target children such as myself for the project. At that time, the politician, local Michigan politician, mafia politician, the politician who was protecting this Michigan mafia pornography ring was a guy named Gerald Ford. This is the same Gerald Ford that went on to become the first unelected president of the United States. Gerald Ford, I never perceived his political affluence. I only perceived him as another abuser like my father, because Gerald Ford also sexually abused me as a child and sexually abused me right on through my mind control victimization until Mark rescued my daughter Kelly and I in 1988. Gerald Ford is not a pedophile per se. He's what I refer to as trisexual. He'll try anything. Any age, anybody, anytime, anywhere, just as long as he had control. Because he had a perversion of power, in addition to his interest in mind control. Therefore, it was Gerald Ford who came out to our house and explained to my father how to raise me in the project according to government specifications. My father had been caught sending this child pornography through the U.S. mails, and therefore he was approached and told that if he sold me into that project, that he would gain immunity from prosecution. My father remains free from prosecution to date for so-called reasons of national security.
That's a classic. I mean, like, that's still what they're doing today. Literally, anything that they don't want to talk about because it likely implicates themselves with criminal activity, it's national security. Even when we did that that deep dive on the S4 files, if you haven't watched it, there's a playlist on the channel with the S4 files. It's a bunch of old footage, a bunch of old whistleblowers talking about like Project Grudge and Project Red Light and like the construction of S4 within Area 51 and all this kind of stuff. And they talk about someone trying to seek compensation for radiation injuries whilst working in these black programs, and they were trying to take, you know, the military or something like that. They were trying to take them to court, and the evidence that they brought forward to prove that they'd worked in these programs to show this is where they sustained radiation injuries was just classified under national security and kicked out of court because national security. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's just the ultimate trump card. What's that? You want to talk about something I don't want to talk about? National security.
My father thought it was just absolutely wonderful and immediately sold me into the project. He felt like the government condoned child abuse. So did I. I certainly felt like the government did. And my father went on to have 5 more children to raise in the project, so there were 7 of us in all. The rest are still awaiting freedom. Once my father agreed to sell me into the project, I was taken routinely to Mackinac Island, Michigan, which is a political retreat where the Michigan governor's mansion is located. It was a bohemian grove of sorts where politicians met and discussed New World Order controls, where they discussed mind control of the masses, mind control in the school systems, how to use occultism as a trauma base. One of my sexual abusers at that time was the Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Trudeau. Pierre Trudeau is a professed Jesuit. Now, the Jesuits are an intelligence arm of the Catholic Vatican. There's a criminal faction within these Jesuits. I'm certainly not saying all Catholics are bad, nor am I saying all CIA is bad or all politicians. There's good and bad in everything. But nevertheless, Pierre Trudeau represented this criminal faction of the Catholic Church, of the Jesuits, who believed in mind control of the masses because they wanted to be the one world church in the New World Order. The money that was being brought in through the church was funding New World Order controls. And he firmly believed in mind control.
Kat Simpson says, not all of them, just most of them. Toxic Fart says, I was going to say something, then I saw a light and forgot. Okay, don't go towards the light, bro. Taris gifted 10 memberships. Thank you very much, Taris. You are a legend, sir. Appreciate all of your support. The Skinny says, I don't often have time to catch these lives. Here's some money to make up for missing church. Thank you very much, bro. Extremely generous with that and the gift subs. Really appreciate it. Kelsey, celebrating 2 months, says, what if people on the spectrum just simply aren't NPCs? I like the way you think, Kelsey. We're on the same wavelength there. Sammy, celebrating 5 months, says, 5 months to me, love and light to you all. PS, 17 days till I go to see my weirdo again. Mark, weirdo love. Thanks, boss. My pleasure. My pleasure. And hope you have a safe trip, Sammy. The Skinny says, I wonder what role does horrific trauma have in psi abilities? It's certainly connected somehow. Yes. I was actually thinking about this the other day. Like, do you guys think trauma is the exclusive conduit to these kind of things, people perceiving reality differently to everyone else? Or are some people like born with this gift? Or you're either born with a gift or you can access it only through trauma? Or can you sort of become enlightened into these ways in a less traumatic way? I would like to hope so. Jared, celebrating 7 months, says, remember to assert your sovereignty and that you don't consent to this type of behavior or to allow it to affect your energy. Thank you very much, Jared. Brickfoot Music says, I've been a school psychologist for 6 years with 6 cases of kids telling me they see shadowy figures. Common thread, trauma. Very interesting, man. And there you go. It's the same thing again. And it makes me wonder, like, is this just like a byproduct of mental damage and it's actually hallucination? Or is it like cracking something open in our brain that it like allows you to peer beyond the veil, essentially? And that, you know, like we often use the term like people who have been through some shit, people who are holding like mental weight and trauma. There's like the saying like, oh, he's got demons. She's got some demons. Is that what that is? Like they can, you know, is that what that actually means? Is that where it came from? I don't know, but it's interesting. Michael Gibbons says, another brilliant stream, Josh. Cathy's story is very disturbing. Watched this talk years ago and David Icke's discussion of it, how they keep control. I didn't know David Icke had touched on this. I'd be interested to see that after the stream. Thank you, Michael. And Toxic Fart says, Eric Hecker said in a Sean Ryan episode at the 30-minute mark that there is an intrusive thought weapon. I wouldn't doubt it, bro. I would not doubt it at all. I mean, even Chris Bledsoe said in the American Alchemy episode that they have, they can essentially beam particles and chemicals to you, like wirelessly into your body. So yeah, it's a scary thought, but like given where we're at with technology and the way things are, I wouldn't doubt it. Yvonne says, thanks, Polarity Josh, for this deep dive. Love to all weirdos. Thank you very much, Yvonne. Appreciate your support. All right, guys, let's keep going with this. We'll take little breathers when we need to, because this is heavy stuff.
Another sexual abuser of mine was then Michigan Senator and later U.S. Congressman Guy Vanderjagt. This is the same Guy Vanderjagt that went on to head the Republican National Committee that put George Bush into the office of president. It was at Mackinac Island, Michigan, when I was 13 years old, that I was dedicated to the senator who had become my owner in this mind control project. That's U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd. Senator Byrd is a Democrat from West Virginia. And again, as you'll notice as I reveal any names, that this doesn't have anything to do with party lines. Democrats and Republicans both are involved because it's not about party lines. It's about who's for the New World Order and who's not. Nevertheless, Senator Byrd had been in office as I've been alive. He's still in office today. He's been head of our Senate Appropriations Committee, which means he held the purse strings of our country. He decided where money would be spent. And I know from having witnessed and experienced and saw so much behind the scenes that Senator Byrd was appropriating money in directions that would allow for New World Order controls. Not only that, but my father, for having sold me into this project, was granted a lucrative military contract for making camshafts for military automobiles. and all. My father became extremely wealthy on his 6th grade education. Senator Byrd, as my owner, would decide where I should go, when, what operations I would be forced to carry out during the Reagan-Bush administration, what places I should be taken specifically for mind control programming. Senator Byrd directed all of my activities. Also around that time, I'd made my first communion in Muskegon's St. Francis de Sales Church. Having made my first communion, I also endured an extra ritual after that that was referred to as the right to remain silent. That's R-I-T-E, as in ritual. This involved Congressman Vanderjagt and the head of our church at that time, a Father Don. And they subjected me to an occult blood ritual. This was so horrific. It was this reversal of the Catholic Mass. It confused my mind because when a person's operating on a subconscious level because they're so traumatized that consciously there's no place for what they're enduring, the subconscious mind has no ability to discern and to question and to reason the same way that the conscious mind does. And this reversal of the Catholic Mass into occultism just made it all seem to run together in my mind. It was absolutely horrific. This blood ritual was so horrible that my mind readily accepted the mind manipulation that I endured afterwards, a hypnotic language, the neuro-linguistic programming, mind-controlled programming, that actually changed the way that my brain was functioning. So that, you know that part of my brain that I said would open up to deal with my father's abuse again and again? They changed that so that they decided when, where, and how that particular compartment of my brain would be opened and accessed. And they replaced the triggering mechanism with hypnotic codes, keys, and triggers, hand signals. There's also phone tones that can also open those neuron pathways and give access to the compartmentalized memory as well. They replaced that at that time. And this was with this right to remain silent. I also had a silence in my head after that, because up until that time, I heard, it was just my own voice, but I heard my voice arguing back and forth with all these different perceptions and from the different compartments in order that I could formulate some kind of a decision about things. I remember before the right to remain silent that I had some free thoughts of my own, and I had hoped for a place in the world where people didn't abuse each other. I'd hoped to have 10 children that I knew would be at least 10 children in this world that weren't abused. I'd hoped for those things, but with the right to remain silent, I lost my capacity, my ability for free will thinking. I lost my ability to even hope anymore. I lost all free will entirely. This right to remain silent silenced this argument that always went on in my head, and instead all I ever heard from that point on was the voices of my abusers directing me, telling me.
Yeah, what Maffin said in the chat. Interesting, right? The right to remain silent seems to have some kind of a weird like occult ritualistic origin, yet at the same time it's basically said every single time someone is arrested. I've never been arrested, so I don't actually know if it's said every single time, but you see it a lot in TV shows. It's a weird one. It's a weird, like, is that coincidence number 7,604, or like, why is that? What is that?
Exactly what it was I was supposed to do. I could only robotically follow those instructions and carry them out.
A linguistic spell. Interesting, Coda.
By the time I was ready for high school, Senator Byrd ordered that I be sent to Muskegon Catholic Central High School. At that time, there was an enormous emergence of information. The Catholics had long since learned the effects of trauma on the human mind. They'd learned it and kept records of it for for so many years with such things as the Spanish Inquisition and other aspects where people who didn't follow the belief systems were wiped out. The Crusaders had also recorded a great deal of information pertaining to trauma in the human mind. This information was being merged with the Hitler-Himmler research that the CIA had taken and had been advancing on. The combination of the merging of the information was very powerful. And Muskegon Catholic Central was a place where this information was being brought together. It was at Catholic Central that the very basis, the very groundwork for Global Education 2000 was being implemented. This is Goals 2000, outcome-based education. There's many different names for the program that's being implemented in our school systems. It's being forced on our children by the federal government. Global Education 2000 was designed to increase our children's learning capacity while decreasing their ability to critically analyze. That way they would just readily accept whatever they were told without any question and just take all the information in.
Well, that was successful. That was absolutely successful. That one definitely worked. We can say that for sure. Someone in the chat was saying, Josh, would you date her? That's a really strange question. Considering what she's talking about, that's a very odd thing to ask somebody. I wish you all the best.
At Catholic Central, I got straight A's. I did really good in school because I was photographically recording everything in class. I endured occult ritual in the school chapel, as did numerous other students in the school. I certainly wasn't the only one. As a matter of fact, by that time, I really thought the whole world was involved in this kind of abuse. By then, my whole environment was saturated with it. This occultism, this trauma, created the photographic recording of all that I learned in school. Of course, I had no ability to critically analyze it or to creatively use it in any way, but the information was sure in there. It was while I was at Catholic Central that Gerald Ford went into the office of president. I had been conditioned by that time to believe that I had no place to run and no place to hide. This is a phrase that's used to lock in mind control victims of varying levels. There's no place to run, no place to hide. We're watching you. I certainly felt like I had no place to run and no place to hide. Who would I turn to? I couldn't turn to my parents. I couldn't turn to my church. Couldn't turn to my school. Couldn't turn to the local politicians. And now I couldn't even turn to the President of the United States.
This is the one thing that really makes me feel kind of compels me and pushes me to like cover stuff like this, because first of all, I don't think that, you know, thousands of people around the world are all coming out saying horrific shit about themselves just to get attention. Like, terrible strategy, you know, and like the things that they're saying are just horrific. So I don't, and I don't also think they're all independently going through some kind of psychosis where they're all telling basically the same story, right? So I imagine being in their shoes and what they're saying is true, and they go, and like they can't tell anyone. They go to the police. Police don't want to know about it because apparently, according to people like Fiona Barnett, when she tried to elevate her story to like the highest levels of the Australian police of experiencing satanic ritual abuse, the police were like, yeah, just like, let it go. Let it go. You don't want to do this. Like, could you imagine how helpless you would feel? Like, that's what fucks me up, honestly. And that's why I feel kind of compelled to just like put this, I mean, this stuff is already out there, but I feel like it's obviously not out there enough because it seems like it's still happening, and these people are still running the show, essentially. So
I truly felt locked in, which is exactly what they wanted for total control of my mind. Of course, since then, I've learned otherwise. And Mark wisely taught me while I was in the deprogramming process that I did have a place to run, so right at them. And I had no need to hide. Obviously, they do, by the way. They're covering up all their acts with the national security blanket. After I graduated from high school, Senator Byrd ordered that I be transferred to Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville, Tennessee was heavily involved in mind control at that time through the country music industry, and above all, the proliferation of CIA cocaine operations within the country music industry were already in full swing. The political corruption in Tennessee was just all the way to the top. The country music industry provided a cover for mind-controlled slaves like myself to be taken around the country to the various places as designated, and also to distribute and deliver the large quantities of CIA cocaine that was coming into the country.
Armin, nice to have you here, brother. Thank you. Yes, we did have a good chat yesterday, everyone. I think I made a mistake of saying that we were having a conversation soon because it got delayed, and everyone has been in my comments saying, when are you posting the video with Armin? When are you posting it? It's now been recorded. It'll hopefully be out at the end of this week.
It's my experience that the CIA's so-called war on drugs is no more than the CIA eliminating their competition as they take over the drug industry worldwide. They took their war on drugs to our street corners and turned our streets into a bloodbath. The country music industry provided the cover for distributing the cocaine, so Senator Byrd wanted me to be within the country music industry. Besides that, he fancied himself an entertainer of sorts, and he fiddled on the Grand Ole Opry from time to time. When I was first sent to Nashville, he was playing on the Opry that night, and he had a musician behind him, a guy named Wayne Cox. Wayne Cox later told me that playing music behind Senator Byrd wasn't the only way that he backed him, but that he backed him politically as well. After the Opry that night, I endured an occult ritual again. Occultism is oftentimes used as a trauma base for mind control. Who can comprehend that kind of a trauma? Blood ritual is absolutely horrible, and it's a perfect trauma base for mind control, for the compartmentalization of memory. I witnessed Wayne Cox murder a railroad bum down at Nashville's Union Station. It was abandoned at that time, and there were bums around, and he shot him right between the eyes and cut off both of his hands, which was Cox's MO for murder. After this blood ritual, this horrible trauma, I was programmed that Wayne Cox would be my first handler in MKUltra mind control. As my handler, Wayne Cox would follow Senator Byrd's directions and instructions, and above all, he would be subjecting me to more trauma sufficient to satisfy the numerous compartments Senator Byrd wanted developed in my brain for mind control programming so that I could carry out various operations during the Reagan-Bush administration. I endured numerous occult rituals after that. Wayne Cox at that time was working directly under the direction of Louisiana Senator J. Bennett Johnston, and he took me to his hometown in Chatham, Louisiana. J. Bennett Johnston at that time was heavily involved in mind control operations because he was running a band of mercenaries out of Louisiana. At that time, this band of mercenaries were going in and out of South America. There was a lot of arms deals going on. There was, and most importantly, when the airplanes would fly these guys down to South America, they would come back full of cocaine, which was being distributed on our streets. Wayne Cox was triggering these mercenaries into operation by showing them a severed hand from another one of his victims, which re-traumatized them into the occult ritual that they had already endured and accessed a specific compartment of their brain. And he told them that J. Bennett Johnston wanted them to give him a hand and carry out a certain operation. He would then give the instructions and the guys would follow him through. So J. Bennett Johnston was heavily involved. At that time,
Britney Spears, yeah, damn. And I mean, there's more examples of other people that have come up through Hollywood that just seem to be prime examples of all the things she's talking about, like completely fractured personalities. And I mean, Hollywood in itself, again, we spoke earlier about the spectrum of layers of mind control in our society. And, you know, I think most of us would agree that Hollywood was potentially one of the first, and I don't know if it was like created with that intention, but at the very least it was identified probably quite early on that it could be weaponized, right? That there was a massive power and benefit to be had from everyone having a TV in their home and having the ability to project ideas, messages into that TV, which goes into people's minds and becomes their perception of reality. And I want to start watching a few speeches from Jordan Maxwell, by the way. We've covered him briefly on the channel before. He's a really interesting guy. People argue that David Icke just stole all of his work. I don't know about that, but along the same line of thinking. And he talks about how going back to, you know, like the Druids, like, and, you know, which is what Alex Jones always speaks about at Bohemian Grove, that these are like druidic rituals, right? That's what they're doing with Moloch and all of this kind of shit. That the Druids would cast spells using wands that were made from the wood of a holly tree. And that is what Hollywood is named after, because they're casting spells with their programming on people. That's not me saying that. That's just me relaying the information that Jordan Maxwell gives and the kind of things that he talks about. But I don't know. I don't know if it's true or not, but it makes sense. It does make sense.
It was 1978, and it was determined that I had endured sufficient trauma to carry out my first trial run operation. An enormous quantity of cocaine had been flown in on one of these operations, and I was to deliver it into the neighboring state of Arkansas. By that time, Bill Clinton's drug operation was in full swing. He was governor of Arkansas, and I delivered this cocaine to a remote airport in Ouachita Forest, which I've since identified as Mena Airport. I also delivered a little packet of information and a small quantity of cocaine, a personal stash from J. Bennett Johnston, to Bill Clinton. I delivered it to Bill Clinton, and he cut out 2 lines of the coke, and he did inhale.
Not Bill. Not Bill, the main character of the Epstein file release. God damn, you dog.
That certainly wasn't the only time I saw Bill Clinton using cocaine.
Oh, I bet.
My sexual experience with Bill Clinton was extremely limited, in spite of the fact that I was a sex slave. It was my experience that Bill Clinton is bisexual, leaning far more towards a homosexual end. All I've ever seen him involved in was the homosexual activity, with very limited experience with him myself. Whereas
there you go. That's disclosure. You just got full disclosure, people.
As my experience was much more prevalent with Hillary Clinton, because Hillary is also bisexual, leaning more towards a homosexual end, and it was she who accessed my sex programming to fulfill her perversions. Around this same time, J. Bennett Johnston subjected me to some other mind manipulation that involved, instead of an occult theme, an alien theme. Now these guys who are manipulating my mind and programming me for mind control purposes claimed, and these criminals in control of our country as well, claimed to be gods, demons, and aliens in order that I feel totally helpless, in order that I felt like they were beyond my realm to affect. And it certainly worked at that time. J. Bennett Johnston told me that he was an alien. He told me that he had been part of the Philadelphia experiment, and when the ship disappeared, it came back a spaceship. This is in keeping with kind of an air-water mirror theme that NASA uses quite frequently, a reversal, because, this, again, the subconscious mind doesn't have any reasoning capacity. J. Bennett Johnston then showed me, through his office at General Dynamics, a then top secret stealth. Here was this triangular stealth that wasn't in any of the school books, wasn't being talked about anywhere, wasn't out in the newspapers or anything else. It was being withheld. It was still a top secret weapon system. But I saw this triangular stealth. It looked like a spaceship to me. I'd never seen anything like that. And everything that J. Bennett Johnston was doing and he was involved in certainly was alien to me. So it was easy for me to accept the idea that what was happening was in fact being perpetrated by aliens. I'm not saying that there's no such thing as aliens. That would be foolish for me to even say anything like that at all. But what I am saying is that it was my experience that these were people claiming to be aliens. If there's a reality out there pertaining to any alien influence, we need to sort out the government misinformation and disinformation and mind manipulation techniques that they're using. I know for a fact that the plan is to make all of us feel totally helpless, that what's happening is beyond our realm to affect because we've been taken over by aliens, that our Independence Day is dawning.
She's cooking.
So beware of that. Understand that those criminals have been keeping information and technology from us under their blanket of national security. They are 25 years ahead of us at least, technologically.
Keep cooking,
Can you
Cathy.
imagine what they've got now? 25 years ahead. What's happened that you're aware of in the last 25 years? Microwave ovens, we've got computerization, and they've had access to all of that to continue their own advancements.
So she's saying in 1995 or thereabouts that the American government or military or both are using the idea of aliens as a psyop or a distraction for the wild technology that they actually have and the crazy fucked up shit that they're actually doing. This is why I think it's all connected. This is probably why Juliette Bryant saw a UFO when she was on Zorro Ranch, on Epstein's ranch in New Mexico. Probably because all of that shit is connected. I have no proof of that, by the way, just vibes. But when you zoom out, you start, and all the things that sound a little bit crazy, you realize there's a bit of a common thread that links all of them.
They're way ahead. So when they say, it's aliens, and they show us some incredible technology, don't fall into the trap of feeling totally helpless, that this is beyond our realm to affect. Superstition begins where knowledge leaves off. And they have been keeping knowledge from us for a long time. People have all kinds of belief systems. And I'm sure each and every one of you has various and different belief systems as well. Regardless of what your belief system is, it is imperative that you know that these criminals are people. They are within our realm to affect. They need to be held accountable for their actions and their crimes against humanity.
I've said, well, we've talked about a lot recently how like there's an information war. There's a war happening for your mind, like for what you decide to believe in, because what we all collectively believe in and agree upon kind of becomes the world that we live in, right? And what Cathy is saying here makes total sense. That if we all collectively believe that like 2027 is coming, it's going to be the end of the world, then that isn't necessarily going to happen, but it kind of lulls us into this sense of like hopelessness and like submissiveness, and that we all like, we can't do anything. It is what it is. And we just kind of allow the way that things are to continue, right? If these people can trick everyone into thinking that we're powerless, then we're all just going to collectively be like, oh yeah, well, nothing we can do about it. But I do disagree. And I know this is like obviously a pipe dream, and it's a bit of an over exaggerated example, but it does kind of paint what I'm trying to say. That if like all of the world's armies and the people who kind of do the bidding, because let's be real, like the people making these decisions aren't the people out doing these operations in the battlefield and whatever. It's people at the top making this decision. If somehow collectively, if there was some kind of like switch that got flicked and people were just like, hang on a second, I'm not going to go and kill other human beings just because some old crusty fuck told me to. I'm going to relinquish my, like the authority that you have. I'm going to step back and be like, no, I'm actually not going to do that. Then suddenly it would be like, okay, now like the power balance has completely flipped, not only because like people are just refusing to listen to you, but now you're like so outnumbered, it's crazy. Obviously, again, that's like easier said than done, but it's an example of the fact that of like, if we all collectively change the way we think, the world would probably change drastically, quickly, I think. How does that happen? I don't know. Maybe it's Chris Bledsoe's new knowledge under the Sphinx. I'm trolling, kind of. Hopefully. I don't know.
It was 1980 and my daughter Kelly was born. She was born directly into the MKUltra mind control project on a much higher level, a more sophisticated technological level than I was subjected to. In addition to trauma, she was subjected to harmonic mind control programming on NASA installations literally since birth, before her brain even had a chance to form. As soon as Kelly was born, Senator Byrd figured I'd been traumatized enough by that time and ordered that we be transferred back to Nashville, Tennessee to carry out operations during the Reagan administration. By being within the country music industry, we had a second handler. His name was Alex Houston. Alex Houston is a ventriloquist, stage hypnotist in the country music industry. Above all, he carries out criminal covert CIA operations that fund the black budget, and this certainly included bringing in large quantities of cocaine and distributing them through the United States, Canada. He was working at that time and provided a cover for me to be taken throughout the United States, Canada, Mexico, and the Caribbean for these criminal covert operations. As my handler, he took me to various military and NASA installations for mind control programming for specific operations that I was forced to participate in. These operations that I won't have time to get into tonight are detailed in our book, Transformation of America. And they involve such leaders as the President of Mexico at that time, De La Madrid, and Vice President Salinas. It was my experience that in 1984, there's a CIA trauma base, near-death trauma center that's located in Lampe, Missouri. It's called the Swiss Villa Amphitheater. And they'd bring certain involved country music acts in to bring large quantities of cocaine or bring the cocaine out for distribution, because Lampe, Missouri is just across the Arkansas line and is very much a part of Bill Clinton's cocaine operation. And it was in full swing at that time. It's also interesting to note that this Lampe, Missouri operation is where the country music industry was more conveniently relocated, you know, right there in Branson, so that it would be closer to Clinton's cocaine operations. Lampe, Missouri was a place where I heard George Bush and Bill Clinton talking, where from the point of view I had, they certainly were friends, and they didn't recognize any party lines between them. That's something for the, a smoke and mirrors illusion for the public. It's not something they adhere to because they had exactly the same agenda, and that was for bringing in this new world order. I heard George Bush talking at that time. He was talking to Bill Clinton, and I've since photographically recorded it and wrote it verbatim in our book, that when the American people became disillusioned with Republicans leading them into the New World Order, that Bill Clinton, as a Democrat, was going to be put into the office of president. This was decided in 1984. Actually, I'd heard about it even prior to that, but that, as of 1984, they were already discussing it as an absolute fact. It was also discussed in the groundwork for NAFTA that by the time George Bush went into the office of president, that Salinas was going to become president of Mexico, and they together would be bringing in the NAFTA, which was...
Someone in the chat says, Josh, sorry for the ping, but doesn't it seem like she's being fed the speech from an earpiece? Once you hear it, you can't not hear it. Well, let's listen out for that. Let's listen out for it. But the thing I would say is like, and I wanted to say the same thing actually about Chris Bledsoe as well, right? If we're to go along the line that these people are being manipulated, so we're talking about Cathy and Chris here, if we're to say that these people are being manipulated to say these things and do these things, for what reason? Like, what benefit would NASA have to get Chris in and start making him think that he's seeing these orbs and that he's summoning them, and then to go out into the public and say that? Like, what are they trying to do? What is their intention by putting this information out into the public like he is some kind of prophet? What would be the purpose for what I could only assume would be like an intelligence agency, I guess, to put Cathy up on this stage and feed her lines talking about, again, she's an American, so we can only assume that it would be an American agency. What would be the benefit of her coming on here with people in her ear going, okay, now tell them how our country's ran by pedophiles. Okay, yeah, and now tell them that the president, he loves ripping lines of coke and he's also a pedophile. Tell him that. Tell him that. Like, I don't understand. I'm not saying you're completely wrong, but I don't get, like, what would be the purpose of that? People say, like, to create division, but like, why would a country want to do that to itself? Unless your country is actually ran by something or someone else. That's the only answer. That's the only answer to that question. Your country is not actually ran by your government. It's ran by something else or someone else.
As the beginning of New World Order controls. I was forced to participate in the criminal groundwork for NAFTA, the opening of the Juarez-Mexican border to the free trade of drugs.
Let's keep an eye out for it, though. Might be wrong. Just notice. No, it's a fair point. Let's keep an eye out for it. Is she speaking from an earpiece?
Free trade of our nation's children. It's absolutely appalling, the criminal roots of NAFTA. Again, this is detailed in the book.
I mean, she's clearly reading from a script, I think. Like, she's constantly looking down, looking up and speaking. You could take those pauses as she's listening, but it does seem like she's reading from a script. I feel like that's probably more likely, but I mean, who knows? We're never gonna work that one out. But interesting.
But it's interesting to note that these political moves had already been decided way back when. And as I deprogrammed, and as I was, it was really something to me to find out people didn't know about this stuff. I mean, it was so obvious to me. I didn't realize that people were unaware and had bought into some kind of smoke and mirrors illusions of what was going on and never thought to look behind the scenes to what was really going on. But I understand good people don't think that way. They don't have criminal minds. They don't think to look for that kind of criminal activity. Just like these guys are limited in their thinking by immorality, good people are kind of blinded from that kind of criminal activity. until their eyes are open to truth. But this criminal activity that was going on at that time, the people that were involved were following directions from George Bush. I don't purport to know it all. I don't purport to know that George Bush is at the very top of all this, but he is as high up as I knew. It was my experience that Ronald Reagan answered to George Bush, not robotically, not under mind control, but willingly, because George Bush was respected for what he knew about bringing in the New World Order. Consider his past. George Bush first began with the United Nations. Then he went on to head our CIA. Then he ran our country through 3 administrations that I'm aware of, the Reagan administration, his administration, and the Clinton administration, because Reagan and Clinton both answered to him. Mexican President de la Madrid answered to him and knew that...
And then his sons, right? Like you could say then his son as well. Like you would only assume they're almost one in the same.
Salinas was to be coming into power, and Salinas had more influence in Mexico at that time than de la Madrid, that, as far as my experience was concerned. Also, Saudi Arabian King Fahd followed orders from George Bush, as did the Prime Minister of Canada, Brian Mulroney. In 1983, I heard Ronald Reagan and Brian Mulroney discussing the New World Order. Senator Byrd had acted in the capacity of a pimp and prostituted me to Reagan, and I was present at this White House cocktail party. Now, Ronald Reagan certainly provided a wonderful smoke and mirrors illusion for all of us. For those of you who don't want to believe that he's involved in this, he told you he's an actor. And he did a real good job of it for a long time. That was his role. That's what he was supposed to do. Nevertheless, I heard Ronald Reagan telling Brian Mulroney that he believed the only way to world peace was through mind control of the masses. I know from experience there's no peace of mind under mind control. And I wonder at a world peace where people don't have peace of mind. Mind control, the ramifications of mind control are far-reaching, because I also know that...
It's George Orwell, 1984.
Under mind control, there's no free thought. Without free thought, there's no free will. Without God-given free will, there's no soul expression. What kind of a world peace can we have without any free will or any soul expression, without any spirituality? Mind control needs to be exposed in order that people maintain their freedom of thought, in order that people maintain their free will and have that spiritual expression, because of spirituality, when people have soul and spirituality, they're going to be acting in a capacity of love anyway. That is where world peace is, not in mind control.
People in the chat are still debating over her like reading from a script and whether that means she's lying or not. And someone said, when expressing yourself, you don't need note cards. I disagree with that, because sometimes when I run a show, like, so when I do these live streams, I don't have a script, but I'll sometimes just make a few notes and dot points for topics that I want to make sure I don't forget to hit on. Because obviously, you guys know me, we start rambling sometimes, we go off on little tangents, and sometimes I need notes just to kind of like bring me back on topic so I flow the way that I want to flow. So I don't think her reading from a script at all means that she is lying. It might just mean she has important things that she wants to make sure that she hits and doesn't forget. That's just my opinion. Babs, you little freak, thank you for becoming a member, and you gifted a membership as well. You came in the door with a gift. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Toxic Fart says she saw the TR3B. Does sound a lot like it. It does. Babs says, is Garth Brooks sus? Potentially. School of SA says Cathy O'Brien, top chef. She was absolutely cooking. Absolutely. Parker says, recommended looking into Kevin Can on YouTube. Thank you. Ra Clark says the real Druids were exterminated during the Roman conquest of Anglesey Island in Wales. All claimings after are fake Druids. Okay. Modern Druids are fake and gay. You've heard it here first. Burley Bob says, hey, Home Slice, this show is bad to the bone. I've always known that Pill Bill and the Killery Crime Family Foundation are the fucking epitome of pure evil. Thanks for airing this. Thank you very much, Burley Bob. Appreciate you. Aeroscene Film says, this story is so crazy, but nowhere I'd rather be on my Saturday night. Can't wait to see what other stories you bring us this year, bro. Thank you very much for the 3 months, Aero. Sailor Boy Troy says, Monroe Process and DMT bring you to the same place. That's how I became sus to how they JSE it for PTSD treatment now. Zombie apocalypse. Yeah, I agree that it is definitely something to be said for that. Fly says, I believe this powerful woman 110%. These cowards must be held accountable, and we start by seeing through the distraction. Great work as usual, brother. Thank you very much, Fly. I appreciate you being here, man. Susie says, see, now we get some truths, and now what? I get your question everything, but we should believe something. You think? Definitely. Absolutely. I mean, I believe her. I believe Cathy. I'll never tell you guys what to think. I just want you guys to think. Right? That's why I do this. I don't do this with like a narrative in mind. I just want to show you guys this shit and get you thinking. Maybe like connect some dots, you know? Tom with $50. Thank you very much. And he says, what did I miss? Quite a bit, Tom. Quite a bit. Quite a bit. I would recommend after this is done going back to the start because there's a lot to cover in this one. But thank you very much for the extremely generous super chat. It means a lot and it helps a lot. Thank you very much, Tom. And School of SA says, so you're telling me Bush's war on terror is a psyop? No. No. Come on. Come on. Don't be silly. Don't be silly. They had weapons of mass destruction. We had to get the weapons of mass destruction. Come on.
By 1988, I'd been forced to participate in numerous operations against my will, all of which I certainly would never have done. I guess if I had had any part of me that was willing to do anything like that, mind control would not have been necessary. I'm appalled at what I was forced to participate in.
What oil?
But I am relieved
What's that?
That this information's getting out. That people are passing the book Transformation of America hand in hand, hand to hand, so that hand in hand we can take back our country. This information is information that you have a right to know and a need to know, and their controlled medias are not going to suppress truth. Truth prevails. In 1988, Mark rescued my daughter Kelly and I. We couldn't think to escape. I couldn't think to save my daughter any more than I could think to save myself. And all those childhood hopes and dreams were certainly hadn't come to fruition. When Mark rescued Kelly and I, we didn't have any ability to even hope for good people. We didn't know they even existed. We didn't have a capacity to trust anyone. It wasn't within our realm of experience. I couldn't think to reason that Mark was a good guy. But I'd seen him with his animals. And even though I didn't have any ability to consciously reason, and Kelly didn't have any ability to consciously reason things out or to think things out, we had this extra sense developed. We sensed things very strongly. After all, when you consider that we use, 10% of our brain, we'd been like blasted into other parts of our brain, and these parts of our brain were real perceptive on what's considered, I suppose, psychic levels by some definition. When we had a sense for things, kind of like the animals did. And we noticed that the animals loved Mark. He had these raccoons that he'd rescued. He had 3 raccoons, and they all loved him, and they hugged him, and they wrapped their arms around his neck, and they patted on his face and kissed him. And, you know, that was really a neat thing for us to see, because we had only seen our animals abused. We lived on a farm. We had lived on a farm, and we had had dogs and cats and horses and cows and guineas and chickens and all kinds of animals, all of which Alex Houston tortured or killed to keep us in line to, you know, if we didn't do this, this would happen to our pet. And we loved our animals. Please bear this in mind, that people who abuse children oftentimes abuse animals. If you see someone abusing an animal, keep your eyes open, look further, make sure those kids are safe. I've never seen an exception to this rule. Not that there's not one out there somewhere, but I've never seen an exception to it. So,
Toxic Fart says, for those who say that someone who's speaking in public and reading from a script is lying, I'm a quote Josh, you are retarded. I said it, bring it. There you go. There you go. My man has said it. And I would agree with you. I would agree with you. And, you know, I think Jesse said this to Chris in the recent interview. And obviously I keep bringing that up because there are parallels here with like NASA and whatever. And I guess, you know, the accusations that like at the end of the day, this stuff will kind of like either come out or it'll kind of crumble, especially more specifically probably with Chris, that this stuff will crumble because that there are, at the end of the day, the truth will come out, right? It always does. So I think we can probably like remove a little bit of emotion from this and just let like nature take its course. Jerry Rogers says, thank you for covering Josh. So many victims ignored. My pleasure. Thank you very much, Jerry. And Achy Balls, nice to see you, sir. It's been a while. He says, hey, mate, truth eventually frees itself. There we go. Credentialed individuals makes for credible witnesses. Get ahead of the game, get it out there, embellish it, then control the response. Label it insane, nuts, ridiculous, druggy conspiracy in the handbook. Exactly. And like we saw, I won't bring it up because it'll reset the video, but at the very, very start of this episode, I showed you guys Cathy O'Brien's Wikipedia page because literally next to her name in the title, her name is Cathy O'Brien, conspiracy theorist. That is how she is defined. Not by anything else that she's done in her life, not by her academic history, not by her achievements or her career, by a conspiracy theorist. And like, to me, that's hilarious that they do that and they just think that people are going to be like, oh, she's a conspiracy theorist. All right, I'm going to go eat my fluoride, eat my processed food and shut the fuck up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's literally the intention with that. It's ridiculous.
it was very telling to us that these animals loved Mark. Additionally, when he came in and rescued us, I mean, here we were under the gun of the CIA. Everything was very precarious, to say the least. I was 30 years old. I was supposed to be killed, as most mind-controlled slaves are at the age of 30. Besides, I was considered too old for sex by that time, so I was supposed to be wiped out. But Mark came in and rescued me from certain death and rescued my daughter from a fate much worse than death, and took the time to rescue our animals. He packed up all those cows and horses and guineas and chickens and loaded them up on these different trailers and everything and brought them to safety as well. This had a profound impact on Kelly and I. We certainly developed an ability to trust right there and then. Mark took us to the safety and serenity of Alaska. Since we were safe for the first time in our lives, experiencing love for the first time in our lives, memories of our past began flashing on our mind's screen. As these memories flashed, and I started to remember what had happened to me and to my daughter, particularly during the Reagan-Bush administration, I became enraged. I was enraged at what my daughter had been through, the tortures I'd endured, and what the plan was for humanity as a whole. I'd have been blinded by that rage, immobilized by that rage, if it weren't for Mark's wisdom in telling me that the best revenge is total recovery. Because through total recovery, by photographically recording all those events, I could expose these people for exactly what they are, for what their plans are, for what I witnessed behind the New World Order. Be able to get help for my daughter, who was in desperate need of help at that particular time. So I began writing out my memories. By writing out my memories, I used a different part of my brain than verbalizing. It bypasses emotion. Bypassing emotion was very necessary for logically making the incomprehensible comprehensible, for understanding and grasping what had happened to us and what could be done with that information. Kelly was not so fortunate. Because of the harmonic programming that she'd endured, remembering the traumas and deprogramming the program did not allow her access to all parts of her brain as it did me. She still needed some technological equipment to help her recover. She needed to actually have those neuron pathways vibrated back open with harmonic equipment. Therefore, she went into Humana Hospital in Anchorage, Alaska, in an intensive care unit. She suffered horribly at that time and responded only to some psychological intervention and not to any conventional medications. Kelly was actually suffering respiratory failure because mind control has advanced to the point where they know the ins and outs of the brain and the mind so well that they know how to program not only the subconscious, but to go into the primitive mind, the very area of our mind where blinking, breathing, and circulatory, heartbeat, all that is regulated. And they could go in there and put death programs in place. In my daughter's case, it was respiratory failure, so that in the event that she ever had cause to remember, which they never expected could happen, but in espionage, that can happen. We've heard of that, where the brainwashed and where they have the memory accessed. So they wouldn't have to take the old cyanide pill anymore like they used to, like spies used to. Instead, they would just simply go into respiratory failure, circulatory failure, and no information would be released at all. There was no chance of the information getting out that way. Since my daughter was being raised was genetically and mind controlled, being brought up to be in espionage, she had that program in place and it went into effect. Because of the medical attention that she needed, she became quickly thrust into the illegal and immoral custody of the state of Tennessee, where she remains today. The violations of laws and rights that proliferated in her so-called legal case were extensive. We had one clean district attorney that went in and told the judge that he was violating constitutional rights and human rights in my daughter's case, and cited law after law after law, and the judge interrupted him and said, but laws do not apply in this case for reasons of national security.
There it is again.
This certainly raises a question. What does national security have to do with a documented, validated, and proven rape and molestation of a child's mind and body?
Two minutes left. That feedback is rough.
For Kelly's sake, and the sake of so many other mind control survivors out there, we need to lift this veil of national security. We need to repeal the 1947 National Security Act.
Yep. See what I'm saying? It's all connected. It's all connected.
This is a national security that's threatening the security of our nation when it covers up such crimes against humanity as mind control, when it covers up the CIA's so-called war on drugs, when it covers up the selling out of our country to New World Order controls. That's a national security.
And see, like this, and again, people have said this, like, this is why you'll never get disclosure, because people are there like, tell us about the aliens, tell us, like, you want the UFOs and stuff. We need to change the National Security Act. It's like, you know, that's probably not got a whole lot to do with why they don't want to change the National Security Act. It's because once that gets lifted up, you unpack a whole can of worms that is in the realm of horrific things that have been done to probably their own citizens, and more. All the things that that Cathy is speaking about, it's not just about aliens and UFOs. All of this shit is connected.
It has nothing to do with the security of our nation. This national security has kept information pertaining to mind control for all of you for far too long. We've got to get this information out. We've got to arm others with knowledge on mind control, because knowledge is our only defense against mind control. We need to get this information out in detail so that we can all be more effective in our particular areas of taking back our country and ultimately taking back our world for Kelly's sake, for the sake of all the other mind control survivors and victims that I know are out there. There's many, many of them. And for the sake of humanity as we know it. It is truth that sets us free. Please help us spread the word. Thank you.
There you go. Knowledge, gnosis. Gnosis is the key. And again, like I said, that's why I feel compelled to talk about this stuff, because I know it is pretty dark and pretty heavy sometimes, but I think the hesitancy by people to speak about it, just it's like it reinforces the negative feedback loop that we live in, right? Where like nothing changes, people complain, people all kind of collectively agree that things are shit, but no one's really willing to like do anything or talk about it. And, you know, not that I think I'm going to individually make any kind of change, but at least, you know, I'm doing something. We're trying to get the word out that, you know, things need to change. Otherwise, things will continue as they are, right? Nothing changes unless you change. And the same is on a collective as well. People are asking for a poll. What is it you guys actually want a poll on? Like what kind of questions do you want there? Tommy says senses of premonition. Thank you, Tom. Scott says extremely relevant right now. Who do we trust when our heroes are dead? There has to be an awakening, and this channel is helping big time. Thank you very much, Scott. I appreciate it, and I'm glad you guys are getting something out of it. Richo says my old man was a soldier, spy, politician, and a Mason. Can confirm that they are shady characters. There you go. Thanks, Richo. Zapparoo with a big $50 chat. Thank you very much, Zapparoo. Nice to see you here as well. He says, a fantastic stream and spot on. She's correct about the people in power and the immoral political puppets. Thank you. Thank you. And yes, I agree. It does feel very topical right now and spot on. Babs says, Josh, have you seen The Boys from Brazil? No, I haven't. I don't know what that's about, unless you're referring to like the Virginia thing somehow. I have no idea what you're talking about. Tommy says you're doing enough, you know. Thank you, Tommy. I hope so. And Christina with $50 as well. Damn, you guys are generous tonight. Thank you very much. She says, another fiercely brave stream from the speaker and the host alike. Thank you, Josh, for such admirable work, and to all the weirdos for holding space for it. Thank you very much for being here, Christina. I appreciate you very much, and extremely generous of you and all of you guys tonight. And to anyone who kind of tuned in late, if you do go back to the start, I do apologize. The start of the stream was scuffed. I will add some timestamps at the bottom so you guys can skip through that shit. But yeah, thank you guys for being here. I hope you enjoyed it. To all the new members that we got, there is going to be a members-only stream tomorrow night, and there's members-only content you can go and check out. And you've got the members-only section of our Discord as well. And if you didn't get a membership, it's only $5 a month. If you want to support the channel, really does help me. You can also support me by buying yourself some merch here. Got a whole merch store. The link for that is below. Follow me on Instagram at PolarityJosh, or you can also support at the Buy Me a Coffee. But at the end of the day, I just love you guys being here, contributing to the live chat, contributing to the vibe that we have here, because it's just so special. I think when everyone's kind of coming together and we're all just kind of on the same wavelength and we all want a positive change. And I think it's just a special feeling. And oh my God, Tommy, wow, $100. Thank you. That's crazy, man. Thank you very much. That's not your first super chat tonight either. That's actually insane. Thank you very much, guys. I can't really express like the gratitude I feel for this kind of support with words. Like, it feels kind of futile, to be honest, other than just saying thank you, thank you, thank you. It really means a lot that I can do this. And we kind of come together and create this vibe. As I said, that really does mean a lot to me. So guys, thank you once again for being here through the tough topics and kind of spreading the love and the good energy, which I think is necessary. So Let's get some love hearts in the chat. Thank you guys for hanging out today. I really do appreciate it. Make sure we keep being kind to each other, spread that good energy outside of the live chat and around all the people that you're with. Keep being good to each other, be kind, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.